Just when you think this government can't get any lower than it possibly already can after its, quite frankly, disastrous handling of the coronavirus crisis and, of course, the upcoming handling of its Brexit crisis, we've also got currently a massive scandal at the moment of a Tory billionaire who donated so that he could get his building project through. Luckily, that who knows what's happening to that at the moment. It seems to have disappeared from the news, but if it does resurface somewhere, I'm sure it will. And of course, we've had other investigative journalists pointing out under the new Twitter hashtag scandals to come, lots of, shall we say, companies set up by suspicious individuals have been set up and have now been gifted about thousands of new contracts from companies that suddenly never existed before. And yet, today, Boris Johnson, of all people, has decided he is going to blame care homes for people dying in them under the COVID crisis. This is an absolute betrayal. And of all people, I'm quoting Piers Morgan here, clap for carers and then blame them the next moment. That is where we are. This is where this government has led us. So this comes from Huffington Post. Boris Johnson refuses to apologise to care home owners over COVID remarks. So the coronavirus has changed everything. Boris Johnson has refused to apologise to care home owners, left furious by his apparent attempt to blame them for the deaths during the coronavirus pandemic. And this is absolutely ridiculous. Care homes were just as surprised about this as anybody else. And it gets to a point where they didn't even have enough personal protective equipment to protect themselves, so they had to use bin liners. Not only that, but to clear the hospitals, the government ordered these old people out of the hospitals where they knew COVID was, they weren't even tested, and they ended up in a care home. A family member of mine, during this crisis, he was in a care home, had a mild stroke, went to the hospital, came out, turns out he had COVID. Tested positive. So, it's not their fault. They had to take him to hospital to get treatment. You can't blame the care home for that. He wasn't even tested upon leaving the hospital or while he was in there. He got tested when he was returned. And by that point, the whole testing regime had only just come into place. There are hundreds of care homes out there that still do not have the facilities to be able to carry out that testing. And it's not their fault. The government just hasn't provided for them. So anyway, it continues. Downing Street has sidestepped repeated questions on whether the Prime Minister regrets his remark. And of course, Boris isn't going to apologise. Don't be silly. Anyway, they said that too many care homes didn't really follow the procedures in the way that they could have. The National Care Association called on Johnson to formally retract his comments, and the one care home chief launched a withering attack on his cowardly travesty of leadership over the COVID crisis. If asked if the PM regretted his words, his spokesperson instead tried to clarify his comments, claiming that he had been referring to the little that was known about the virus's spread in the community. He was pointing out that nobody knew what the correct procedures were at the time. Nobody knew the correct procedures to put in place were at the time because of the extent of the asymptomatic transmission was not known. We're learning about the virus all the time, the spokesperson said. When asked why the PM hadn't actually said that, the spokesperson said, "I have nothing more to add." Again, asked if he will apologise, the spokesperson said, "As I've just set out, the PM thinks that throughout the pandemic, care homes have done a brilliant job under very different circumstances." That is not exactly what Boris Johnson said. and especially as said in his original statement, where he blamed care homes for the COVID deaths that had occurred. Put to him that Number 10 was not offering any apology and that was suggesting that everyone was simply misunderstood Johnson's words, he said, "I have been very clear. We have put in place a comprehensive action plan to protect care homes, including rigorous testing and additional funding." Number 10 added that care homes across the country have been doing their utmost to keep residents safe in the most challenging of circumstances, and it remains the case that almost 60% of care homes have not had an outbreak at all, the spokesperson added. Almost 20,000 care home residents in England and Wales have died with coronavirus. The majority dying in their care home, the Office for National Statistics has reported. COVID-19 accounted for 29% of the deaths of the care homes of residents between March 2nd and June 12th, and a fifth of all deaths of care homes residents this year. Matt Hancock, the Health Secretary, told MPs today that the government has been learning about the virus from the very start and improving procedures all the way through. "I pay tribute to the care homes in this country who have done their utmost to care for the most vulnerable throughout this crisis," he said. Narara Amid, the chairman of the NCA, said that Johnson's remarks were a huge insult. To think that they stood clapping for the NHS and social care and then used the same hands to slap the faces of every social carer is absolutely appalling. When you think that some of the mistakes that have been made, I'm absolutely stunned that he has made these comments and he should retract them. Mark Adams, the chief executive of the charity Community Integrated Care, said that the Prime Minister's comments were hugely frustrating. "I think we're almost entering an alternative reality where the government sets the rules and we follow them and they don't. And if they don't like the results, and that they deny setting the rules and then they blame the people who are trying to do their best," he told BBC Radio 4's Today programme. He also added, "I think this is at best and was clumsy and it was cowardly. I think what we're getting is history rewritten in front of us. When you could list pages and pages of government failure with the system has had to cope with. And to get a throwaway comment almost glibly blaming the social care system and not holding your hand up for saying too late, doing the wrong things, making mistake after mistake is frankly unacceptable." And then what follows is basically the full lobby of that went on between the journalist and the care home, not the care home, that session where that comment was raised. And yeah, it's absolutely shocking. And I'd like to point out, voters have long memories. This crisis, Johnson's comments, the soon-to-be Brexit crisis, and trust me, there are scandals to come if what a number of investigative journalists are beginning to report about. So, oh boy, I hope to God that the Tories at the next election get absolutely wiped. And I hope, to be honest, we get a Labour government that is going to sort all this mess out. And trust me, it is going to be a mess to sort out. But the other thing I hope is the Tories never ever enter power ever again for at least the next 4 decades, because they have proved that they cannot, in any way, shape or form, govern this country in any way that is responsible and for the needs of this people. They are only catering to a very minor select few number of people, and that's the rich people out there. And that's the truth. That's what we're looking at now. But like I say, the Tories, with their big majority, they've got no one else to blame. There's no one else to blame but themselves. They've got the majority to be able to do essentially whatever the hell they want. It doesn't matter if every single member of the other party votes against them. They can get whatever they like through. And that's the terrifying thing. Post comes next year, because as I repeatedly said, next year will be the big reveal of what we've won. And I'm not looking forward to it.